In 2009, one of the biggest companies on Earth made a strange announcement. Google said it had hired a crew to mow the grass at its California headquarters. Not a landscaping company, not a fleet of mowers. A herd of about 200 goats, trucked in to eat the fields around its offices for a week. It sounded like a publicity stunt. It was not. It was the visible tip of a real and growing business, renting out goats by the day as a living landscaping service. A herd will clear brush that machines cannot touch, climb slopes a mower cannot reach, and eat the invasive weeds and poison ivy that people will not. One goat can eat several pounds of vegetation a day, and it fertilizes the ground as it goes. Cities hire them to clear parks. Solar farms hire them to graze between the panels. Fire departments hire them to eat fire breaks before wildfire season. Here is the flip. You would assume a goat farm makes its money on milk or meat. It does. But the strangest money in goats is renting them out, and the most surprising fact of all is that America cannot grow enough of one goat product to feed itself. By the end of this video, you will know what a goat farm really costs, why a cheap animal that breeds like this still leaves most farmers broke, and which goat product this country imports most of. Start with the animal, because for once, the animal is the easy part. Goats are cheaper and simpler to keep than cattle or pigs, and a single one runs $75 to $300. A serious starter herd, 25 good meat does and one buck, costs $7,000 to $12,000, a fraction of what a single decent horse or a few cattle would run you. Then the land, and goats need far less of it than cattle, because they browse weeds and brush other animals ignore. Buying pasture runs around $1,760 an acre on average, though leasing land can cost as little as $600 to $3,000 a year. Then the real expense, and it surprises everyone: fencing. Goats are escape artists, and people say if a fence can hold water, it might just hold a goat. You need serious no-climb wire, backed by electric, across every boundary. Add a shed, a truck and trailer, and at least $1,500 of milking equipment if you go into dairy. So the range is wide. A small leased operation can start near $8,000. A large-owned farm on 40 acres runs past $250,000. But whatever tier you pick, the strange gift of this business is compounding. A goat is pregnant for only 5 months, usually drops twins, and those kids breed within the year. The animal is cheap, and it quietly makes more of itself. Buy the herd, and here is what actually comes with it. You inherit 2 wars that never end, and a market problem nobody warns you about. War 1 is the fence. Goats test every gap, every latch, every weak post, every single day. A goat that gets out, gets into a neighbor's garden or onto a road, and the fence is never quite finished, only holding for now, 1 weak post away from a loose herd. War 2 is the parasite. Internal parasites, above all the barber pole worm, are the #1 killer of goats in America. They drain a goat from the inside, the dewormers are losing their power to resistance, and a careless month can cost you half your kids. There is no vaccine, only management, and you never get to stop. Goats look tough. They die easily. Then the quiet problem. Goats are easy to raise and hard to sell well. There is no goat aisle at the average supermarket, and no big processor waiting to buy your animals by the truckload. To cash out, you need a specific buyer, an ethnic meat market, a licensed creamery, or a grazing contract, and if you have not lined that up, you are stuck with an animal that is easy to breed and almost impossible to move at a good price. A goat farm makes money in layers, and they are stranger than any other animal on this channel. Here they are. Layer 1, the biggest. Meat. Goat meat demand is rising fast, and a well-run herd of 100 does can net $15,000 to $25,000 a year, on land too poor to grow much else. This is the engine, and we will come back to why it is so strong. Layer 2, the premium. Dairy. Milk itself is worth little, but turned into artisan cheese and sold direct. The margins run 20 to 35%. That catch is a grade A license, an expensive wall between you and the cheese counter. Layer 3, the weird one. Renting the herd. Targeted grazing pays $2 to $4 a goat per day, or $100 to $400 an acre a month, and a brush clearing herd can bring $800 a week. Your animals earn just by eating, and the client pays you to graze land you never even owned. Layer 4, the breeders. Selling quality registered stock to other farms, plus a small fiber layer, mohair and cashmere, which carries a warning we will get to. Here is the fact that should not be true. America does not grow enough goat meat to feed itself. It imports most of it. Listen to that again. By one government-backed estimate, around 70% of the goat meat eaten in the United States is imported. More than 1 million goat carcasses a year, most of it shipped frozen from wild herds in Australia. Goat is the most eaten red meat on the entire planet. Demand here climbs every year with immigration, and American farmers still cannot keep up with their own neighbors. So sit with the shape of it. A cheap animal that breeds twice as fast as a cow. A market so short of supply, it ships the meat across an ocean. Yet still, most would-be goat farmers never cash in. Why? Because the hard part was never raising the goat. It was finding the buyer and building the chain to reach them. And that chain barely exists. The demand is proven. The farms are missing. Turn the page to what leaves the account, and the costs are lower than a cattle ranch, but they hide in different places. Feed first, though goats cut it themselves by browsing brush, so good pasture is money saved. Then the endless fence repair. Then the vet and the dewormer, the parasite war being the single biggest health cost you carry. Then the buck to breed them, the copper and minerals goats need, but which can poison sheep, the shed, and the fuel to haul them to sale. Then come the losses. Kids lost to parasites, to cold snaps, to a coyote in the night. In dairy, add the cost of the creamery and the license before you sell a single wheel of cheese. The animal is cheap to buy. Keeping it alive and legal to sell is where the money quietly goes. Here is the trap, and it is the mirror image of every other farm. Everywhere else, the animal is expensive and the market is easy. With goats, the animal is cheap and the market is the whole problem. Follow it. Goats are cheap, they multiply fast, and demand outstrips supply, so people rush in. Then reality lands. Meat pays thin per animal, so you need real volume and a real buyer. Your dairy premium sits behind a costly license. Meanwhile, the parasites never stop, and your fortunes can swing on markets and policy you do not control at all. Easy to start, hard to profit. There is also a darker version of this trap, the farm that bets everything on one product, propped up by something outside its control. When that prop is pulled, the whole thing falls. It has happened to goat farmers before, on a massive scale, and it is worth seeing exactly how. But first, the bright side of this business, and the woman who built it. Go to Sonoma, California, in the late 1970s. A woman named Laura Chenel traveled to France to learn how to make goat cheese, came home to her own small herd, and began making chèvre, when almost no American was buying farm-made goat cheese at all. There was no market, so she went and found one. She brought her cheese to Alice Waters at Chez Panisse in Berkeley, the temple of the farm-to-table movement, and it went onto the menu. From that one restaurant, American goat cheese was born, and an entire premium industry, worth far more than the milk it started from, grew up behind her. Chanel proved the lesson that still runs the dairy side of this whole business. The milk is worth almost nothing. The cheese, with a story and a name, is worth a fortune. A market that did not exist until someone went out and created it. The value was never in the goat. It was in what you made of it and who you convinced to buy. Now the warning, because not every goat market is real. Go to the Edwards Plateau of Texas, once the Angora goat capital of America, producing 90% of the nation's mohair. In 1954, the government declared mohair a strategic material for military uniforms and began paying ranchers to produce it. Here is the catch. The military stopped using it by 1960, and the checks kept coming for another 35 years. By the early 1990s, 85% of an Angora rancher's income came from the subsidy, not the market. That program paid out over $500 million, some of it to famous names, including the newsman Sam Darnoldson, who collected $97,000 in a single year. Then, in 1993, Congress finally killed it, with the last checks cut in 1996, and the industry that ran on the check collapsed. Angora goat producers liquidated about 80% of the herd through the 1990s, and the price of mohair fell from over $3 a pound to around $1. A whole kind of goat farming nearly vanished the moment the government stopped paying for it. Never build your farm on a check you do not control. So who actually makes money in goats? 4 habits separate them. 1. They sell into the proven demand. They raise meat goats for the ethnic and specialty markets that are chronically short. They learn the calendar of religious holidays that spike demand, and they build the buyer relationship before they build the herd. 2. They own the value add. They do not sell raw milk, they turn it into branded cheese and capture the margin, the way Laura Chanel did. 3. They stack the strange income: meat, cheese, herd rentals, and breeding stock together, so no single market can sink them. 4. They win the two wars: ruthless parasite management, rotational grazing to break the worm cycle, and real fencing, because the difference between a herd and a graveyard is health and a good fence. Underneath it all, they understand the real business. The goat is cheap, and the demand is real. The money lives in the selling and the keeping alive. So does owning a goat farm work? Let's run both sides. The good case. You start cheap, with an animal that multiplies fast, several odd income streams, and a meat market so short it imports most of its supply. Line up your buyers first. Add value through cheese or grazing contracts. Lean on the free labor of an animal that mows and fertilizes as it feeds. And a well-run goat farm can absolutely pay, on land too rough for anything else. The hard case. Thin per-animal meat margins force you into volume. The parasite war never lets up. Dairy hides behind a license wall. The fences never hold. And markets and policy can turn on you overnight, as the Mohair ranchers learned the hardest way. So here is the honest verdict. Goats are the cheapest, fastest breeding livestock you can own, in a country that cannot feed its own demand for them. And the only reason more farmers do not get rich is that raising them was never the challenge. Selling them was. You were never really in the goat business. You were in the business of a market that imports most of what it eats and still cannot find enough farmers to fill it. The goat is the cheapest part, and it always was. The whole game is selling it, adding to it, and never letting a government check or a single worm decide your fate.